Welcome to Hancher. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Keith.
Hi, yeah.
Oh, so glad you're here. Come on in. Come on in. Hello, Mike.
Hi there.
Welcome. We're so glad you're here tonight. Yeah.
All right.
There we go. Mike, would you like to take my arm?
Sure, absolutely.
What a beautiful night.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Good evening and welcome to Hello It's Us, Perspectives on Inclusion. This program is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to people with disabilities. And our belief is that as you, the viewers, watch the program, you'll recognize that these issues are important to everybody because, after all, people with disabilities are a part of the general community. Hello It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development, Uptown Bill's Coffee Shop, and the good people at Public Access Television. My name is Mike Hoenig. I am a co-host of Hello It's Us, and I work at the Center for Disabilities and Development. Keith?
My name is Keith Ruff, and I'm a disability advocate. I'm retired from independent living and currently writing a book.
Well, tonight we're doing something very exciting. We are filming on site at the new Hancher Auditorium. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for that great greeting. We really are thrilled to be able to be here and talking with you and some of the other staff at Hancher about the great work that's going on and some of the history. And we probably had a lot of our viewership know who Chuck is. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, Mike and Keith, I just want to again welcome you and just tell you how excited I am that you are here tonight. There are so many Hancher stories to share, and I love to share those stories. So my name's Chuck Swanson. I'm the executive director of Hancher. I've been in Hancher 32 years now. So I've seen a lot, been involved in a lot, but I think my love for Hancher just continues to grow day by day. So we were hit, as you know, with a crazy flood. All of Iowa, the Midwest remembers 2008. But Hancher was hit pretty hard. And you know, Keith, you mentioned earlier, you can just look right here from the windows. This view, Mike, is unbelievable. Caesar Pelli, who designed Hancher, said that one of the reasons why he wanted this job is because of the gorgeous setting. He said he's never been able to design a building in such a gorgeous setting. But just south of here, Mike, you don't see any remnants of the building or anything, but people who knew Hancher from before, they can just vision it and they can just see it. And I want you both to know too, there's a tree that's planted just right south of us, a little bit to the east. And that tree, and there's a little plaque under there too, that tree was planted and that plaque was put into place in memory of 3 workers who died when the original Hancher was built. And so that really kind of made us think during this whole process of constructing and designing Hancher, we really thought a lot about the workers and we really wanted to honor the workers. So I'll get back to that at a later time, but 2008 we came to the building. The building was all padlocked. They had closed down the building because of the flood. The building had been damaged, you know, to the extent that they really didn't want anybody in the building at all. So we had a performance schedule. We had to cancel the performance, and for several weeks, we as a staff looked, you know, from afar because we couldn't go into that building. And really, it was home away from home. It was really upsetting to us. So finally, we did get into the building. We got to assess the damage. And we really worked for a while with a local architect, really thinking that maybe we'd be out of the building for a year. We looked at our season, the 2008 and 2009 season, and we had to cancel at least half of the season because some of those shows required the big stage, and we had nowhere to in our community to take, Spamalot, Avenue Q. We had the Joffrey scheduled.
Oh my.
So what we did with half the season that we kept, we worked with City High School, we worked with West High School, we worked with the Englert downtown, we worked with Riverside Casino, and we found places to move those shows to. And one of the things that I remember, Connie, who you'll meet later tonight, one of the things she was always concerned about, of course, is accessibility. Because Hancher's for everybody, and we
Right.
wanted to make sure wherever we were going to go, whatever venue we chose, that everybody could get to that venue, and everybody had a place to sit, and everybody had a way to enjoy the show. So February then of the next year was 2009 is when we found out from the university that FEMA had assessed the damage of the building, and the building was damaged greater than 50% of the value of the building. So guess what? We had the opportunity to think about building a new Hancher Auditorium, along with several, the School of Music and the School of Art and Art History, and there were a total of 22 buildings damaged by the flood. So there was about another year and a half that we had to work through the siting of the building, because Hancher and the School of Music were attached. The two of them were together. And so we finally, it was a good year and a half. We finally found out that FEMA would let us divide the building in two because the School of Music really wanted to be closer to campus. They wanted to be downtown, which made total sense. Hancher wanted to be here for accessibility reasons, right off the interstate. We really wanted to make sure that plenty of parking. We are a real public facility where people come and go from performances. Our operations were totally different than the School of Music.
Right.
So we both got what we wanted. We wanted to be here, but of course on higher ground. We wanted to definitely be, much safer from
Right.
future flooding. And so the School of Music was happy where they ended up. And then we ended up putting a team together, a team of professionals who were going to design and then build the new Hancher. And it was interesting because we had 59 applications for the design architect of Hancher. That's the most the university's ever had for any project. And so Caesar Clark Pelley is who we finally chose. And as I mentioned earlier, he wanted this site because of the gorgeous setting. He said he's never been able to design a building in such a gorgeous setting. But he also said because of the reputation nationally and internationally of Hancher. He wanted to be a part of building and designing the new Hancher. So we finally put a team together. It was a team of about 20 different contracts. We had, of course, a design architect. We had an architect of record. We had a landscape architect. We had a theater consultant. We had an acoustician. We worked very closely with the University of Iowa, Brian Matternack, in terms of accessibility. We definitely wanted to make sure that the new Hancher had everything that the old Hancher had, but even better. And what I loved about it is our staff was very involved in the design process, and you'll find out later in tonight's program, hearing from Connie Tipsword, our Director of Patron Services, and Gary Sanborn, our audio engineer, that we really wanted to make sure that we had everything in the new building that made Hancher for everybody. So that was really, during the design process, really on the minds of everybody. And it was 30 months of design, and then 30 months of construction.
My goodness.
And during the 30 months of design, it was real interesting working with the design team because Clark Pelley, in the world of architecture, they're rock stars. And you heard of the Petronas Towers in Malaysia. They designed those towers. And Mortensen Construction, who built this building, our construction managers, they built Disney Hall in California. So we're working with top-notch people here. But early on in the process, they really understood the mission, the vision, the history. They really embraced Hancher, the institution. And it's interesting because when the flood happened, I always said Hancher is more than a building. But when you don't have a building, you find out that you really need that building.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the architects said that it was interesting because Hancher as an institution had really outgrown that original building. So we had 30 months of design, and then we went through 30 months of construction. And I want to get back to the workers. During the construction time, we really found ways to really honor our workers. We really wanted to find ways to, first of all, the safety was on everybody's mind. Everybody was concerned about the safety of the workers. But also, we wanted the workers to know that we appreciated their craft. We appreciated their willingness to stick to the schedule. There was a January, I don't know if you both remember, that we had 32 degree below temperature.
I do remember that.
Yes, it was day after day after day. And those workers continued to stay on schedule because they knew we wanted to open in September of 2016.
And I heard it was day and night.
It was day and night, Keith. They worked day and night. Some of them were working on 24-hour shifts.
Yeah.
People would drive by here and the lights were on, and they could tell that people were here, were committed. And what I loved about it is throughout the whole process, these workers would say to me and to others, they would say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And they would talk about how they literally loved this building. And I always said that Hancher was really built with a real spirit of love. And that comes from, these almost 40 years plus in that original building, and the way Hancher touched people's lives. Here's an example, is that before we even started construction, we wanted to make the environment, the grounds, safe for the workers. And so the original building was still standing, but it was on life support. It really, really, I'll tell you, Mike, it looked bad. You remember that, Keith, how bad that building looked? People were asking me, when's that going to come down? And so finally, we had the hole dug here, and the design of the building was done, and all the team, of course, was put together. And so in Japan, what they do is they have a ceremony before they start a major construction process, and they bless the ground to make sure that all the workers are safe during the whole construction project. So what we did is we've got friends in California, San Jose Taiko, they're Japanese-American drummers. So we commissioned them to do a site ceremony for us. So we started at the original building, and it was the Taiko drummers along with our team, our project team, people from Pele Clark Pele, from Mortensen Construction, from OPN, our architect of record, and the Hancher staff. And we started at the original building, and San Jose Taiko led us drumming to a stage that we had in front of the hole that had been dug. And we were transferring all the energy, all the history, all the love from that original building to the new site. And then San Jose Taiko took the stage, and then for 90 minutes, they did a site ceremony, blessing the ground. And guess what? We had one sprained ankle with workers in the next 30 plus months.
That's amazing.
So it worked. It was incredible.
That is terrific.
And then another thing that we did over on this side of the building is that we had a beam signing. We wanted to there again that spirit and that love of Hancher. People missed it. For 8 years, Mike and Keith, we still programmed in all these various venues and that. But at the same time, people were missing the big stage. They were missing that building. And so we had a beam signing, a 70-foot beam that we had painted white. And for 2 days, we had people come and sign the beam.
Oh my gosh.
We had over 1,000 people sign the beam. And some people signed that beam and they put their names and they put a little heart around it. And Hancher's where they first met, or Hancher's where they got engaged, or Hancher was maybe their first date. And so they have fond memories of that. There were also generations that came. There were parents and grandparents and grandchildren. And I'll never forget the grandparents would look at us and they would then look at their grandchildren and they would say, or point to them and they would say, I want the same for them that my children had. And so really the stories were just for 2 days. I always say everybody has their Hancher story, and everybody was sharing their stories and signing their names. So then we had a singer-songwriter, Susan Werner, who's actually from Manchester, Iowa. And she is terrific. So we had her over because we wanted to have a little ceremony. We had about 400 people there. As the beam was put up into place, we wanted to have her sing. And so I talked to the crane operator. His name was John O'Neill. I remember him, and I said to him, I said, John, I said, would you work this, crane with this beam and put that up into place as Susan sings a song? He said, I've never done anything like that before, but he said, for Hancher, I'll try to do it. And so he put that beam up, that beam was toddling, you know, kind of going like this, and put it up into place as Susan sang, and there wasn't a dry eye in that group. Everybody loved it.
Putting you on the spot, do you remember what she sang?
You know, I don't, Mike, but
That's-
it was a beautiful tune.
I'm
It was
sure
one
it
of her
was.
originals.
Oh, it
But that's a
was.
good question. I should remember that.
Oh, that's all right.
And then we came inside, and then it was just a concrete floor, the stage. We had no seats in the auditorium or anything, but we had set up chairs and tables, and there were 350 construction workers in there for a safety luncheon. So, and Caesar Pelli was here, and his team from New Haven. And so the people from OPN, from Cedar Rapids, Mortensen Construction, of course, was all here, and all the workers. And then Susan, after lunch, sang for about 30 minutes. And she ended up with an aria from an opera, and I'll tell you what, it was totally silent. People just loved it. Those construction workers, they said later they'd never felt, you know, the appreciation, you know, for anything, any other job that they'd ever done. And of course, it was instilling pride in the work that they had done too. So finally, after 30 months, you know, the building, it was June 1st of 2016, we got the keys to the building. The work wasn't quite done. Instead of a whole certificate, you know, we got a conditional certificate of occupancy because there was still more work to be done. But we got the keys for the summer to really commission the building, to really, you know, first of all, ourselves learn, this is the folks backstage, to learn the lights, the sound, the rigging, to make sure that, you know, the hearing augmentation system would work, to be able to test the acoustics, to be able to even test the rigging and the lighting, of course. In a theater, those are the things that are important. And we had to learn that, our staff had to learn that before they could train others.
Sure.
And before they even learned it, they wanted to test it. And then along the way also, we had what we called some soft opening events. We had some things during the summer before we opened the doors to the public in September. And I'll never forget, it was August 24th, I think was the date. We had what we called a hard hat performance. And this was a performance for the workers. We wanted the workers and their families to sit in the seats and enjoy the fruits of their labor. We wanted as a thank
that's
you,
terrific.
we wanted this party for them. So we brought a band in from Chicago, a band called Mukapatsa. And this band was perfect for these workers. The first half of the concert, they were a concert band. And then the second half, they turned themselves into a marching band with cheerleaders. And I'll tell you, the construction workers and their families loved it.
But they did.
So then afterwards, Mortensen Construction held a reception in the Stanley Cafe for the workers and their families. And, you know, Keith, you see all this cypress wood that's up in the ceiling, the beauty of that, Mike, it's like a piece of art, the way it's installed. It's all the way through on the outside of the building, the overhang, and then in the entire ceiling of the lobby area and the Stanley Cafe too. And the installers of this, every day they'd get done, I'd say, don't you have a sore neck? Because to install that was really tedious, but it's done perfectly. So at the end of, or during the reception, this woman came up to me and she said, oh, Chuck, I just want to tell you that my husband was one of the installers of this wood, this cypress wood in the ceiling. And she said to me, she goes, you know, he's never had such a big job and he'll never have such a big job ever again. This job was very special to him. And she goes, I want you to know that he's never felt so appreciated on a job. And she said, and secondly, I want you to know that I've never been invited until this time to see a final project of his.
Wow.
So really, throughout the whole process, we really, it was like a family putting this whole thing together. And then, you know, believe it or not, we were ready by September to open this place. And we opened it with open houses, and we had 9,000 people over the weekend. I look out, and we had an open house on a Friday after the ribbon cutting, and then we had another open house on Sunday. And before we opened the doors on Sunday, people were lined up all the way out to the parking lot. And people walked in, and Keith, I don't know if you were here for it, or Mike, but we had jugglers, we had stilt walkers. We really wanted the kids especially to remember this for their whole life. People got to go on stage, people got to go into the dressing rooms, and it was an opening to remember. And we all felt that Hancher deserved that. You know, it's rare. I just have to say, it's rare that a performing arts center like a Hancher, this year we're celebrating our 45th anniversary, but only our second year in a new building. So we really had the luxury of learning everything we could out of that original building, and then putting those thoughts together into the design of this building. And I don't want to take anything away from the original building, because in terms of accessibility, it was a very accessible building.
It was.
It was, Keith, but yet we could even take this building to even a higher level. And the world of the performing arts has changed too. You know, that Hancher was really, I hate to say it, but it was getting a little tired.
It was its time.
It was, thank you, Mike, it had reached its time.
I'm curious to know, when you talked about incorporating the new, or the accessibility, the lessons that you'd learned from making it everybody's venue, you know, at the old Hancher, you know, I think Keith and I have both run into situations where we've had maybe a bit of conflict, or, you know, that sometimes maybe architects aren't, you know, they want it to look nice, they've got their standards. So, and you sort of alluded to it a little bit in terms of that early on they got the understanding that this is, you know, they understood the mission. Did you ever have any, you know, whether you mentioned the hearing augmentation, so did you ever have any issues, whether it be with that or just with the general construction, where you had to really, you know, have some long discussions about, okay, this, I'm sorry, but we've got to make this or I should say I'm sorry, but that you would say, you know, we've got to, this is something we've really got to move on. Did you ever have pushback, or was it a pretty smooth?
You know, Mike, I have to say that working with this team of people, you know, who designed and who built this building, it's been one of the greatest joys of my life. We really, everybody was on the same page. Everybody knew from the very beginning that Hancher's for everybody. And I'm not kidding you, that team of people, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. They were incredible to work with. I would say the only thing that we really wrestled with, this is really funny, but it's a performing arts center, and acoustics, sound is very important.
Oh, sure it is.
And so we wanted restrooms that were very accessible. We wanted open doors, kind of like what they have over at the arena. We wanted people to come in quickly and leave quickly. We didn't want a door to be causing time issues or whatever. And so we really wrestled with hand dryers or paper towels. And we talked for hours about that. And not that anybody was on one side or the other, but we wanted to do it right. And so we chose the towels, because we didn't want, I know, I like them better too, but we didn't want the hand, you know, the blowers to cause a problem acoustically. You know, because sound is a big major factor when a performing arts center is in operation.
And that's so interesting, because we've run into situations on campus where there's sort of a new design with the hand dryers, where you have to, instead of the, you know, now you're having to stick your hand down like this. And that has created some major accessibility issues.
Oh, wow.
So by doing the towel thing, you not only, you know, address the acoustic thing, but you addressed an accessibility issue, and maybe didn't even realize that the dryer thing may have posed a problem, but it's just kind of neat how, you know, so many times when you're trying to do something to benefit everybody, you end up doing something that also benefits, you know, provides some additional accessibility.
When I was in school, I came to the old Hancher a lot.
Well, you know, one thing too, Keith, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about the original Hancher in your question. And you know, the original Hancher, the cafe, you remember the cafe, Keith? That was not in the original plan. Hancher was built in 1972. It opened in 72. That cafe came, I think it was 1980. So we had to make a change. We had to make that cafe work with what we had. And there again, in this building, we had everything we had learned from that building, and in this original design, the cafe was a part of it.
That was 2 years before I came.
Oh, that was 2 years before. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not from Iowa.
Well, I was a student when the first Hancher opened, and I'll tell you, the first building, it was state of the art too, and it was beautiful. But over the years since, every field, but the performing arts in particular, things have changed a lot. And
Yes.
one thing too, that with the performing arts, and one thing that we really thought a lot about in terms of the design is that people come for more than what's just on stage, but people want to experience the social part. People want to come and they want to gather, they want to discuss and anticipate what they're going to be seeing on stage. So the cafe that we have, the Stanley Cafe, the lobby areas, we really tried to put a lot of thought and effort into making those, there again, as accessible as possible, as welcoming as possible. Because I mentioned this earlier, I look at this and feel that I want this to be our community living room, our community dining room. I want Hancher to be for everybody.
Well, that's great. And, I think it's quite a tribute that you have been at the forefront of many things, including accessibility. Keith and I were talking off air about, Keith, you in the early days that you went to Hancher back in the 70s, I guess. Was it?
No,
Or 80s.
I got here in 82.
Right.
82, okay,
But you were
good.
accommodated back in the day with your wheelchair and everything, right? That they would help you get to your seat and.
Because if I wanted to sit in back, it
Oh,
was
sure.
okay.
Oh, wow.
But they even took me down.
Oh, that's great. You
Well,
want to be close where the action
and
is.
they took the wheelchair
Good for
back
you.
up.
Well, I want you both to know too, Keith and Mike, that no matter how good we can be, we can always be better too. So I always want to have discussions about how we can do things even better. So, just know that Hancher wants to have dialogue. We want to have discussions because, things do change and things evolve, and we're always up for learning. We're part of a university, the University of Iowa, and that's all about, inclusiveness. That's all about really, making things even better than what they are.
And I know that you practice what you preach, so to speak, because I know, as an example, that that you and your staff invited a group of students that, in a previous program, we talked about the Hawkeye Accessibility Ambassadors.
Right.
Students that with disabilities that come to different departments on campus and talk about design. And after all the work you've done, it would have been real easy for you to just kind of rest on your laurels, but here I hear this great thing about you bringing the students over, and I just think that's quite a tribute. So I mean, you're obviously very genuine about when you say that you want to have ongoing dialogue. I know that was a great experience for the students. And
Good. Well, I have to go ahead.
And before the advent of ADA,
Yeah.
I was practically totally accommodated.
That's great. Well, it's in the spirit of Hancher.
Yeah.
But I have to say too that every staff needs a cheerleader, and Connie Tipsword, our Director of Patron Services, is also our accessibility coordinator. And no matter whatever comes up, she's always a voice and an advocate, and we're all behind it.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have somebody there too that keeps current and, is really keeping everybody else kind of on their toes too.
well, and speaking of Connie, I'll give the viewers a sneak peek into next week's show. We're going to actually be talking about accessibility in much greater detail and focus on the many ways in which Hancher accommodates. I know that there are some plans to even expand that further, and we'll be talking about that next week. But as sort of a wrap up for today's show, we thought it would be good for those of you who are viewing, who we hope all of you will at some point come to Hancher, and want you all to know that there's an easy way for those of you who are seeking accommodations to request them. So Chuck is going to direct us to the concierge station.
Keith, I'd like you to meet
Keith.
Connie and Gary.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
So Connie, tell us a little bit about the concierge.
As you come in the main entrance to the auditorium, if you make a quick left, you'll find yourself at the concierge desk. When we started planning this building, we didn't really add any new services. What my dream was to kind of consolidate it all in one spot. so that anything people needed help with, they could come to one spot to find. And it sort of got named concierge desk because people sort of know what that means from the hotel industry. So this is it. And you can get a start here for any sort of accessibility that you might need. If you have a question answered, if you need us to call a taxi for you at the end of the show, whatever help we can do. Almost all of our performances, there is a trained usher here at this spot to help you with whatever you might need.
And I want to tell Mike, I love the signage, Mike. What's at the top of the concierge area here is a big question mark.
Wonderful.
So whoever's here knows
they're
everything.
They're going to know it. There you go.
Well, or if they don't know it, they have a radio and can call me.
There you go. And you do know everything. 'Cause
Well,
I know you.
I don't know if I know everything, but I'm good at making up answers.
So Gary, this is where people will pick up their assistive devices,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have to be honest, we've got both the FM system that we had in the old building, as well as the new loop system, and I don't even, I don't hear any complaints anymore, so I don't even know if people are using I know they're using the loop system. I don't know how much they're using the FM system. Are they using it, are you aware of, are they using it quite a bit,
Yeah,
or?
it's like it always has been. It depends on the show.
Yeah.
But
so-
yes, we've had really good response.
Is
to,
still getting use as well. So, so it's just, I mean, if I were a hearing aid user, I'd probably want to be using the loop, just because it's would enable me to use my own hearing aid, and that would be truly the best way to. Your hearing aid is designed for your hearing loss, and that, you know, that was achievable. I should probably just say, in the old building we had these neck loops, and we still do. It required somebody, though, to check out a receiver, but it did enable them to use their hearing aid, and so that was very good too. It's just that it seemed like very few patrons were aware of that, or it just never was convenient enough for them, I guess. But now, you know, with the loop that's in the floor, instead of having to wear it around your neck, the loop is just in the floor. People just come in and flip a switch, and they're ready to go.
Using it. Well, we're going to get into much greater depth in our next week's show. So, and we are out of time, unfortunately, already, as always seems to be the case. So we want to thank Chuck and Connie and Gary for taking time to meet with us, and obviously want to thank you, our viewers, as well as our sponsors. And we'll look forward to sharing a whole lot more information about Hancher and accessibility next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good week, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.